There is a strip of water only 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. You have probably never heard its name. But right now, this week, it is controlling how much you pay at the gas pump. It is called the Strait of Hormuz. And as of Saturday, June 21st, 2026, Iran has declared it closed again, for the second time in 4 months, just 3 days after a ceasefire deal reopened it. 20% of the entire world's oil trade passes through this single channel. 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, too. When a channel that narrow controls that much of the world's energy, closing it does not just affect the Middle East. It reaches directly into your wallet. Welcome to the money trail. Let us follow it. If this is your first time here, welcome. This channel is about one thing: connecting the dots between money, power, and the decisions that shape your world. No jargon, no agenda, just clear research-backed analysis that tells you the story behind the money. Now let us get into it. To understand why this matters, you need to understand the geography. The Strait of Hormuz sits at the entrance to the Persian Gulf, between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. It is the only sea route out of the Gulf. There is no alternative waterway. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Qatar all rely on this single channel to ship their oil and gas to the rest of the world. Roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day. For decades, this strip of water has been called the world's most important energy choke point. And on February 28, 2026, that choke point became a battlefield. The United States and Israel launched military operations against Iran under Operation Epic Fury. Iran retaliated immediately. Drones, ballistic missiles, small attack boats. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps issued warnings forbidding passage through the strait, boarded and attacked merchant ships, and laid sea mines in the waterway. A fact confirmed by CNN, Axios, and U.S. Central Command. By early March, Iran had formally declared the strait closed. Insurance companies stopped covering vessels willing to make the journey. Shipping crews refused to sail through. For all practical purposes, one of the world's busiest waterways had gone silent. According to shipping data tracked by the WTO Data Lab using live vessel monitoring, crude oil flows through the strait dropped by roughly 95%. LNG shipments dropped by an estimated 99%. The International Maritime Organization reported that around 20,000 mariners and 2,000 ships were stranded inside the Persian Gulf with nowhere to go. So what happens to global energy markets when 20% of the world's oil supply suddenly cannot move? The price of oil spikes. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Brent crude surpassed $100 a barrel within days of the closure. Some Wall Street analysts began discussing the possibility of prices climbing significantly higher if the closure continued. For comparison, oil had been trading in the $70 to $80 range before the war began. And the closure did not just affect oil. The Strait of Hormuz typically carries about a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas supply. According to the International Energy Agency, there are no alternative routes for Qatari LNG to reach global markets. None. Qatar, one of the world's largest LNG exporters, declared force majeure on its export contracts. That single decision sent shockwaves through energy markets in Asia and Europe simultaneously. Now let us follow this trail directly to your gas pump. According to Wikipedia's analysis of the 2026 Iran war fuel crisis, gas prices rose $1.16 per gallon in the United States since the war began. In California, gas prices surpassed $6 a gallon in 7 counties. Canada saw gas prices rise approximately 30%. Jet fuel spiked 95% in North America, forcing airlines to raise fees across the board. And the United States was actually one of the least affected major economies. Because America produces much of its own oil and gas domestically, it is less directly dependent on Hormuz than Asia or Europe. In fact, a New York Times analysis found that the United States was one of the biggest financial winners from the crisis. American oil and gas exports surged, generating an estimated $50 billion in additional revenue, according to that analysis. Russia also benefited significantly, picking up an estimated $15 billion in additional energy revenues as global buyers scrambled for alternative suppliers. Asia felt the pain first and hardest. China, India, Japan, and South Korea together rely on the Strait for the vast majority of their oil and LNG imports. In 2024, an estimated 84% of crude oil shipments through the Strait were destined for Asian markets. China alone received a third of its oil via the Strait. Europe was not far behind. European gas storage was already running well below normal levels following a harsh winter. When Qatari LNG exports were suspended, European gas benchmark prices nearly doubled within weeks. The European Central Bank was forced to postpone planned interest rate cuts. But the most severe impact landed somewhere most people never think about: food. This is the part of the story that almost nobody covered. According to the International Energy Agency, more than 30% of global urea trade, a key ingredient in fertilizer, moves through the Strait of Hormuz. When the strait closed, fertilizer exports stopped too. Combined with rising energy costs, the price of producing food itself spiked sharply around the world. What began as a military conflict had become a fuel crisis, an inflation crisis, and in some regions, a genuine food security crisis. Now here is where the money trail gets even more interesting. Despite a closure that should have caused catastrophic price spikes, some oil still found its way through. Iran was reportedly charging multi-million-dollar tolls per ship for passage. Lloyd's List reported that some of these payments were being made in Chinese yuan. Even in the middle of an active war, money found a way through. Then, on June 17, 2026, a breakthrough. President Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a memorandum of understanding to end the war. The deal was signed during diplomatic talks in mid-June, on the sidelines of the G7 summit in France. The agreement included a critical clause. Iran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz. There would be no tolls for 60 days. The relief was immediate. U.S. Central Command confirmed that commercial traffic began increasing through the strait within days. Vice President Vance reported on Fox News that millions of barrels of oil had exited the strait in a single day, a record since the conflict began. But the relief lasted exactly 3 days. On June 20th and 21st, Iran declared the strait closed again. This time, Iran cited continued Israeli military strikes in southern Lebanon as a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. Iran's military command called it the first step in response to what it described as America's bad faith. U.S. Central Command pushed back, saying ships were still transiting. Iran's own foreign ministry contradicted its military, saying the strait was operating normally. And simultaneously, U.S. and Iranian negotiators opened technical talks in Switzerland, with mediators from Pakistan and Qatar in the room. This is the Strait of Hormuz in 2026, a waterway that is open and closed depending on who you ask, on which hour you ask, and whether the latest ceasefire clause is being honored. The UAE's state-owned oil company has warned that full flows through the strait may not resume until 2027, even if a final deal is reached quickly. Because beyond the politics, there is a physical problem. Iranian forces laid sea mines in the strait during the conflict. U.S. Central Command initiated mine-clearing operations in April, deploying naval destroyers and underwater drones to find and clear them. Those mines do not disappear when a memorandum is signed. Clearing a mined waterway takes weeks, sometimes months. So let us bring it all together. A 34-kilometer strip of water between Iran and Oman, through which 20% of the world's oil and gas normally flows. Closed February 28th, partially reopened and closed multiple times through spring 2026. Briefly reopened under a ceasefire deal June 17th. Declared closed again June 20th. Talks ongoing in Switzerland as of this week. And mines still in the water. The direct financial consequences have been felt everywhere. Higher gas prices in America, energy crises in Europe and Asia, food shortages across the Gulf, $50 billion in windfall revenue for American energy exporters, and a global economy that has been forcibly reminded of something it had almost forgotten. Modern civilization runs on energy, and a disturbing amount of that energy flows through a single 34-kilometer gap in the map. That is the money trail behind the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, today, it is still being written. If this video helped you understand why a waterway you had never heard of is directly connected to your gas bill, your grocery bill, and the interest rate on your mortgage, hit subscribe. Because every week we follow a new trail, and there is always another trail waiting to be uncovered. I am the Money Trail. See you next week.